Freedom First Society's mission is twofold. We seek to strengthen freedom's foundations and to expose and rout the conspiracy. In the first two videos of this series, we discussed freedom's foundations. In the third, we expose the conspiracy. In this video, we will examine how the conspiracy operates, some of the traps it lays, and how to stop it. As our book title, Masters of Deception, The Rise of the Council on Foreign Relations, denotes, their operations are quite deceptive. While the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR, repeatedly claims to take no position in politics, Georgetown University professor Carroll Quigley let us know otherwise. He wrote in his book, Tragedy and Hope, "The Council on Foreign Relations is the American branch of a society which originated in England and believes national boundaries should be obliterated and one world rule established. How do the insiders, those in the society described by Quigley, plan to accomplish this? Fear is one factor. People are often willing to trade liberty for a bit of perceived security. Have you noticed how the news focuses heavily on a number of global threats? In every case, the only proposed solution involves relinquishing more of our nation's sovereignty to the global community. This definitely supports the CFR's goal that national boundaries should be obliterated and one world rule established. Three types of global threats created or contrived by the insiders are aggressive communist countries, environmental concerns, and biological warfare. A report prepared by Dr. Lincoln P. Bloomfield for the U.S. Department of State in 1961 reveals the strategic role of communist countries in creating the ostensible need for world government. This report, entitled "A World Effectively Controlled by the United Nations," laments, given a continuation unabated of communist dynamism, the subordination of states to a true world government appears impossible, but if the communist dynamic were greatly abated, the West might lose whatever incentive it has for world government. In a nutshell, the world can't be entirely united if a struggle against communism continues. But without the struggle, we may lose incentive to have world government at all. The insiders faced a dilemma. They needed a pretext for the pretended mellowing of communism through glasnost and perestroika, as well as some on-again, off-again cooperation with the West in international institutions. The insiders have ensured that the battle against communism never ceases by enabling and supporting communist dictatorships. Two examples are Russia and China. Freedom First Society's book, Masters of Deception, documents how CFR founders financed the Bolsheviks and aided Lenin and Trotsky, sinking Russia into communism. Ever since, Russia has been built up by our country to become a military threat that will not go away. Senator William Lester Armstrong reported in his 1982 Senate speech, "In the last 10 years alone, the United States and other Western nations have sold to the Soviet Union and its satellites more than $50 billion worth of sophisticated technical equipment the communists could not produce themselves. This equipment has been used to produce nuclear missiles, tanks and armored cars, military command and control systems, spy satellites, and air defense radars. It is difficult to overstate the extent to which the West had contributed to the military threat that now endangers our very existence." Decades later, Foreign Affairs, the CFR's flagship publication, reported that we will have to deal with an authoritarian Russia, however weakened, for the foreseeable future. It was the treachery of CFR member Dean Acheson, Truman's Secretary of State, and General George C. Marshall that delivered China into the hands of communist Mao Zedong, leading to the genocide of 60 to 100 million Chinese. Later, ensuring that China would have the means to become a plausible enemy, federal policy induced American industry to relocate to China. It was CFR heavyweight Henry Kissinger who prepared the way for such favorable relations with China. It should be no surprise that China now appears on the world stage as a threatening force. The intentionally planned aggression by Russia and China together could create an enemy so formidable that all other nations would be forced to combine in a world government to keep them in check. Remember that Dr. Bloomfield indicated that without the communist threat, the West might well lose whatever incentive it had for world government. While communism continues to be nurtured, environmental concerns were chosen to be an additional motivator for world government. The Ford and Rockefeller Foundations, both heavily run by CFR members, provided the financing for the environmental movement to take off. Saturday Review editor Norman Cousins, a CFR member, unveiled environmentalism's world government goal. He said, "Humanity needs a world order. The fully sovereign nation is incapable of dealing with the poisoning of the environment. The management of the planet, therefore, whether we are talking about the need to prevent war or the need to prevent ultimate change to the conditions of life, requires world government." What Mr. Cousins says about sovereign nations being incapable of dealing with the poisoning of the environment is completely false. In fact, the sovereign nations that protect private property have always proven to be the most environmentally responsible. In her book, Environmental Overkill, Dr. Dixie Lee Ray accurately assessed, first, we must recognize that the environmental movement is not about facts or logic. More and more, it is becoming clear that those who support the so-called New World Order or world government under the United Nations have adopted global environmentalism as a basis for the dissolution of independent nations and the international realignment of power. Please read Freedom First Society's booklet, The Doomsday Fraud, The Truth About Climate Change, for more insight. Public fear of biological warfare can also accomplish many of the insiders' goals. The COVID-19 pandemic struck a blow at our vital middle class and our economy, gave the pretext for the increased national debt, and allowed unprecedented government control. The global nature of a pandemic allowed consideration for global control of health. Read more about how COVID-19 served the insiders in our booklet, Dare to Call It Conspiracy. Fear has definitely been a key factor in inducing Americans to give up freedom, but there is a big danger with trading liberty for security. As John Adams said, "But a constitution of government once changed from freedom can never be restored. Liberty once lost is lost forever." We cannot afford to lose any more liberty than we have already lost. While the fear of global crises serves to push us toward world government, unless America is greatly weakened, it will be slow to consider world government. Thus, any measure that drives us closer to economic collapse, internal strife, or moral decay serves the insiders' cause. Socialist consolidation of power in the government additionally serves the conspiracy, as its ultimate goal is the consolidation of all power. We will find the insiders' fingerprints on any campaigns that fit in these categories. For instance, we find insider involvement in all campaigns that would ultimately lead to the consolidation of policing powers. This includes disarming the populace, disintegrating local police forces, nationalizing police power, and giving unconstitutional police power to the military. The insiders have also weakened the country with skyrocketing national debt that has been deemed the most significant threat to our national security by Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Admiral Michael Mullen. The civil unrest and division within our country has been greatly exacerbated by the insiders and lays the foundation for a communist revolution. Learn more about this in our Dare to Call It Conspiracy booklet. A huge stepping stone to world government is progressive regionalization, often promoted as mere trade agreements to which we forfeit sovereignty. The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, the USMCA, is a dangerous example of this. You may recall from the previous video in this series that Professor Quigley revealed that the political parties should appear to be opposing but function identically. The USMCA was undertaken with the full support of President Donald Trump, who is cast by the media as ultra-conservative. Among other things, this betrayal of the country by promoting the USMCA proved him to be a servant of the insiders, as his leadership neutralized conservative opposition. In the first video of this series, we discussed the importance of a God-fearing population to secure freedom. We cannot neglect to mention that immorality and godlessness are key components in preparing an advanced nation for tyranny. The Italian communist Antonio Gramsci wrote that the mission of socialism was to capture the culture. Gramsci's disciple, Rudi Dutschke, called it the long march through the institutions. The conspiracy has definitely taken over the educational institutions and infiltrated the religious institutions to change the American character. A particular target of the insiders is the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution distributes power among three branches and the states and binds government from growing into tyranny. It is the greatest roadblock to the insiders. Professor James McGregor Burns, clearly an insider crony, wrote in his 1984 book, the power to lead. Let us face reality. The framers of the U.S. Constitution have simply been too shrewd for us. They have outwitted us. They designed separated institutions that cannot be unified by mechanical linkages, frail bridges, tinkering. If we are to turn the founders upside down, to put together what they put asunder, we must directly confront the constitutional structure they erected. Besides public ignorance of the principles enshrined in the Constitution and elected officials trampling it, the Constitution is under direct attack through the promotion of an Article 5 constitutional convention. Promises that such a convention could be held to one issue are false. All suggestions that the Constitution is flawed are false. Beware, the conservative personalities that promote a con are also false. They can easily be identified by where they stand on this issue. Comprehensive articles on this subject can be found at freedomforsociety.org. The issues we have specified today are some of many branches that grow out of the conspiracy tree. If we spend our time chopping at just one branch, the tree will live and other branches will continue to grow. The only way to fell the tree is to cut it down at the trunk, to expose the conspiracy that feeds all those branches. Freedom First Society is the only organization that is doing this very thing. To save our country, it is imperative that we grow. Members of Freedom First Society organize to educate and to engage their neighbors in this battle for freedom. One important part of the battle is to contact congressional representatives with accurate guidance to move our country back on course. We expose the current operations of the conspiracy in our monthly action report and provide our nationwide chapters with education and guidance on effective, peaceful actions to head off the conspiracy. Please visit our website, freedomfirstsociety.org, to access the information you need, including our books and articles. You will also find our scorecard, which displays the voting record of every member of Congress with explanations of each bill that is graded. Past experience demonstrates that Congress is much more likely to vote in favor of upholding the Constitution when they feel pressure from their informed constituents back home. Who are these informed constituents? You and me. Use our links to write to your legislators in reaction to their scoring. Sign up to receive our alerts. Finally, please review our founding principles and sign a Freedom First Society application to become a member of Freedom First Society. You can make a difference. We have found that every member directly influences at least 10 people, who in turn educate 100. With only 800 to 1,000 Freedom First Society members in a majority of congressional districts, we can change the course our country is on and secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. Again, please join with us.